Hey guys, it's Bina, and welcome back to another video. Today, I want to go over what I think is probably the best overall build in the patch. Just overall in terms of like in every single area, in terms of tankiness versus tankiness relative to damage, relative to clear, relative to the ease of play, the ease of gearing, the ease of everything. I think this is probably it. It reaches absolutely insane amounts of damage. It reaches absolutely insane amount of tankiness. It's super easy to play. You just hold 3 buttons at once, and then all you do is keep going. Let me showcase this in a few maps and in bossing as well. So let's start with a map. We are here in 1000 Corruption. This is a showcase in offline mode. This is based with the gearing from the Endgame planner. So this is the base endgame planner that you will be able to obtain fairly easily. So let's showcase this, what I'm doing right now. It is Shadow Cascade, but my old Shadow Cascade was going low life with the Primordial Chest. That made you so that you had like really good recovery, and like it solves your tankiness all around. But this specific version goes into Ward on Shadow Creation, caps your glancing blows. It has you have all your health pool of life. You get more than the amount of ward that you would get with Architect of Astral Blood. So I think this is just like an overall better version. On top of that, it has way more damage. It has more than double damage. So I think this is this is it. This is how you play. There are some requirements that you need for mana sustain. It's going to be either getting mana efficiency with Sync Strike on 2 of your idols here, or more, depending on your preferences and how your character is geared, and what are the rolls on your mana efficiency with Sync Strike. But those affixes you can also get on chest and helm. So yeah, it's striking a balance of that. I'm gonna go showcase the new pinnacle boss here in the Fractured Prison. So as you can see, I will be standing in pretty much everything. All we have to do, you basically have like almost 80% dodge. Well, I mean, probably more than that actually. Here I'm sitting at 77% dodge chance. I'm just sitting on everything. I have so much ward generation. Where is he? Typically he doesn't even move from the center. But as you can see, you just hold 3 buttons. You get your damage and your tankiness. And then I'm gonna go showcase Uber Aberoth here. Uber. Same thing for Uber Aberoth. You can pretty much ignore all of its mechanics. So the idea is using Shift, Sync Strikes, and Dancing Strikes. And you're proccing Shadow Cascade with all of your shadows. The only thing you got to be careful of at the start of this fight is the the big area of void around you. But you can pretty much sit in everything, even these things. Since you have so much dodge, pretty much nothing will really hit you. And if it does, you have capped glancing blows. You have a decent amount of armor. You have I'm actually scaling strength in this build so that you get more armor from it. Here I'll just sit on the boss. The Harbinger will just TP to you. You can sit in all the puddles, all the lasers. You don't really care about anything. You've got Element Cleanse on shift. So this was the Uber Aberoth fight. A couple of nice things. You got Element Cleanse on shift. We'll go over all the details. But first, I want to go over the... so that was the gameplay. I want to go over the skills. So your main attack is going to be Shadow Cascade. This is what is dealing all of your damage, basically. So you're going into the nodes that increase your damage per shadow. And we have up to 7 shadows on this build. So this is going to be a big multiplier. We also have Careful Assault, which also deals more damage if you have at least a certain amount of shadows. So in the past, in the previous patch, this was like bugged in a way where you had to snapshot it by using Shadow Cascade manually and then never cast Shadow Cascade manually again. We are not casting Shadow Cascade manually in this build. You're only proccing it from Shift and Sync Strike. But this node was change to be at least a certain amount of shadow instead of a specific amount, and you don't need to snapshot anymore. So there's no more snapshotting. The build is super, super smooth. We are also going for flow state to get even more damage, damage per sword and damage per dagger. So using a sword and a dagger is going to be very, very good. And then we're going to go into Shadow Cascade, deals more damage per 1 melee attack speed that you have. This is going to just increase based on your affixes that have increased melee attack speed on your gear. Another very important thing, mana gain per shadow. So last patch we were not really able to go for the life version. I mean, you could go for the life version, but like mana was harder to fix because shift was giving you a lot of mana below half health. But now that we have like that many shadows with the new set, the doppelganger set, you can get tier 8 as your primordial here and have like a up to a 50% chance to for consumed shadows to create a new shadow. Actually, it's 45 here. So you have 45% chance for shadows to create a new shadow. And so that will enable you to like get even more umbral blades and even more mana gain per blades, because all of your shadows will drop an umbral blades. The shadows drop umbral blades here, and then when you use shift, you recall them all and you get mana per blade recalled. So that is very, very nice to solve your mana. And then that is why there's a couple of different ways, but I think that this is the best way. That is the overall most balance between damage, tankiness, ease of gearing, etc, etc, etc. So going for tier 8 primordial on your relic is going to be your choice. So Shadow Cascade is your main damaging ability, and these are the points that we go for. And then Sync Strike, when you are very, very early in your gearing process, you feel free to not use Dark Allies if you have mana problems. Dark Allies give you +2 shadows and 100% mana cost increase for Sync Strike. And so if you're just spamming Sync Strike a lot like this, and you see that your mana is not recovering enough, maybe because you're just starting out the gear, maybe you want to start it out without having a full setup, just remove that. It will spawn less shadows, but it will solve your mana. You'll be able to keep the playstyle of the build. It has so much damage that, you know, damage will still be fairly good, even though not at maximum output, but you will actually be able to play the build while leveling and while doing all these other things. So if you have mana problems and don't have idols for mana efficiency on Sync Strike, feel free to remove Dark Allies. Other than that, this is a very important node for shadowing. So your shadows created with Sync Strike deal increased damage, and the effect stacks. So in this build, we're stacking cooldown reduction on. We're going for tier 7 on the belt and boots, and so we're going to be stacking this quite a few times. It's going to give us a lot of increased damage, alongside our increased damage per active shadow with Shadow Cascade on our gear. So this is going to be a very nice increase in damage. We are going, so one of the other most important ones here is going to be shadows use Shadow Cascade. You rush this for sure. The mana efficiency node here, we're going to get some physical shred and Crimson Shroud, which is going to give us damage reduction versus dots. So it has a lot of defensive layers in this build. And yeah, so that's pretty much for this tree. Shadow Infusion, I like to go for this one. It gives you ward gain per shadow. So this is just another source of ward gain, so that it increases your tankiness, since this build really does not lack any damage. If you want to go for more damage, you could go into all Art of the Blade. It gives you attack speed, which would scale, you know, your Shadow Cascade, and this node in Shadow Cascade as well, that gives you more damage per melee attack speed. But I prefer going into Shadow Infusion to be more tanky, especially if, like, you know, you're doing omens, you're going high in corruption and stuff like that. Damage is not going to be the limit. It's going to be mostly your tankiness. Then we need to talk about Shift. Shift, very important to get the mana gain on use, the movement speed, and the cooldown. So this is going to be pretty like mandatory. You are invulnerable while shifting. Also, you get an insane amount of dodge rating while shifting. Shadow Cascade is used after using Shift as well. So as you can see here, when I use Shift, like, my shadows use Shadow Cascade. Then we're going to the left side here. The important node is Cleanse Ailments. So that makes it so that on your rotations, if you get Ignites, if you get Chilled, if you get the Frailty of Aberoth or anything like that, you will just always get cleansed all the time. So any sort of ailments is not very dangerous for you. We are going into Unseen Strike and this node here for reduced distance. This node does not increase your damage, but it reduces the distance, makes it easier for you to like stick on a boss and not go too far away. Feel free to mess with this one if you want to, you know, experience different sort of playstyles, if you want to go faster in maps or something. And Unseen Strike is just making it another melee attack so that you get plus level to skills with your gearing, and you also will get some stacks of perfection because you need to hit with a melee attack to gain a stack of perfection. Perfection will give you armor, dodge, and increased damage, so it is very, very good. This is why we're using Unseen Strike. If you want to, you could go for the kill threshold, but I don't think we need this. Another thing, Umbral Blades. Umbral Blades, most important thing is the mana gain per blade is like the base functionality of it. So we are going for the Shadows Drop Umbral Blades. We're going for the Recall Blade Shadow Chance. So they have a chance to create a shadow at their position as well. This is very important for solving mana too. So this, and this for the mana gain per blade is extremely important. I'm going for the Recalled Blade Pierce Chance, and then getting the Ward on hit on Recall. Inflicting Shadow Daggers is just a little bit of extra damage. I mean, you could definitely do without, but I like to put this in because we are not really, you know, we don't have very high priority points in this tree. I'm converting the Cold to get Chill. Chill Chance reduces the attack speed of enemies and their movement speed, so it's pretty good. And then we're going for Bleed and Slow here. You already have like almost perma haste, like pretty much perma haste as long as you're hitting stuff. So I'm not going for this one, but you could also get some haste here. Dancing Strikes. Dancing Strikes provides a huge amount of buffs. You get the rhythm stacks, which scales a lot of different things. You get global more damage here. You get dodge rating. You get global critical strike multiplier. So all sorts of good damaging buffs for Dancing Strikes. We are getting some damage over time reduction. And also the arena, which gives you more damage and less damage taken in the arena. So Dancing Strikes basically, while holding down the 3 buttons here, there is a skill priority system in Last Epoch, which makes it so that every skill on your bar will get used by the order that they are from left to right. So if I have Shift and Sync Strike, the game will, and I hold them both, as soon as Shift is available, it will always use Shift. And then if it's on cooldown, it will go check for the next one, and the next one, and the next one, right? So it's important to have Shift, Sync Strike, and Dancing Strikes in order from left to right. If you hold all 3 of them together, it will always use Shift on cooldown, Sync Strike on cooldown, and in between all of those, it will use Dancing Strikes. So this just automates your rotation, and you will see that you just proc the arena under you here. It will just automatically proc all the time. So if you stick on a boss and you stay in the arena, you get insane damage and insane tankiness as well. I'm using Decoy unspec'd, just for example, against beasts or something like that, or some dangerous mobs. If I want to get the attention off of me, and so that they turn around and hit the decoy, I just throw a decoy, and then Shadow Cascade here. You could literally use anything else, but yeah. So that's kind of it for the skills. Let's go over the passives. In the base tree, we're grabbing as much physical damage and attack speed as possible, going for damage taken while moving, and haste on hit, and increased damage per movement speed. Mandatory node, Twin Blade, to be able to dual wield. Then in the Blade Dancer tree. So Blade Dancer gives us +1 max shadows, +1 max shadows here. On our gearing, we're going to get +1 max shadows here, and +1 max shadow in here as well. So that's going to give us up to 7 shadows. But we are grabbing some nodes into health and crit avoidance. We're grabbing the melee attack speed. This one is not absolutely mandatory if you have other source of crit avoidance, but it's nice to have for the extra health. There's a couple of different choices you can do in this tree, but this is what I decided to go for. We go for the movement speed and melee damage. Flow, you need 3 points in here to gain a stack of flow. When you use a unique skill, every single different attacks of Dancing Strikes is considered a unique skill, so you will get flow. So then after getting for each stack of flow, you will get increased damage when journeying or consuming flow, and crit multi when journeying or consuming flow as well. But the 3 points in this one gives you melee attack speed buff, which is going to buff your damage like crazy if you're just sticking on a target and always attacking it. You will see your melee attack speed go up like crazy in here, and yeah, it's just very, very, very good. So insane damage buff for this build. Then go once for the flat damage. We go for 5 points in Flash of Steel to get the increased melee attack speed while dual wielding. We also get a little bit of increased damage. The Stacks of Perfection. So here you get 1 point for increased damage. But the Stack of Perfection will give you increased damage per Stack of Perfection. So you get maximum 10 stacks. So you also get increased damage at full health, armor per stack, and dodge rating per stack. So that will make it so that when you're hitting enemies and you get your Stacks of Perfection, you will get an insane amount of extra armor and dodge rating. We'll just make it so you can just sit on targets and be very, very tanky. 3 points here for the crit avoidance. You don't necessarily need all 3 points in here, depending on your setup. This is what I decided to go for. And then you go into Spellbreaker. This is Frailty Chance. Frailty is an important source of damage reduction by making enemies deal less damage. So if you have another source of Frailty, you can feel free to remove these points. If not, these points are very good. Mandatory here, Shadow Master for the +1 maximum shadows. And then we have All In, so it makes it so that if you are crit capped, you will just deal way more damage, right? Because you get 75% crit multi, but it will make your non-crits deal less damage. So make sure that you are crit capped. Starting out when you're leveling the build, you don't really need this. Don't really need to crit cap that much. The build has just so much damage, but eventually you will just be crit capped naturally. Falconer, 5 points to get more damage with haste. So this is pretty good. And then in the marksman tree, I'm going for focus fire. So these are travel points to get to missile mastery, which give us some armor shred chance and effective armor shred. So a good amount of armor shred to be aiming for is about 100 stacks or more. The armor shred is mandatory on any hit build. It's just a multiplicative multiplier of damage. So make sure that you get this. Unless you have like enough with your gear or something else. But these are very, very good points to get. And then you go into concentration. So concentration will give you more damage. So 16% more damage will have concentration. If you get hit, you lose concentration. But you won't get hit much because you have 80% dodge chance. 1 point travel point into 4 in reflection. Less hit damage taken while have concentration. Just another source of less damage taken. So this is for the passive. Now for the gearing. So what I showcased today was a showcase with a tanky version with tier 7 ward gain when you create a shadow on both the chest and the helmet. But you could go for, tier 7 increased damage with Shadow Cascade instead on both pieces and just do way more damage, but you will not generate as much ward. As you can see here with these pieces of gear. Wait a sec. Okay, with these pieces of gear, I generate about, like, what? 4 or 5k ward? Right? So you're quite a bit less tanky than if you would go for both pieces with tier 7. Feel free to mix and match. Where here I'm reaching, like, about 10k. 8 to 10k ward tops. So damage is not the issue. I much prefer having more ward and never dying than having, overkilling monster by 100 times instead of by, 60 times. But feel free to mess around with this if that's what you like to do. I went for a more balanced approach. So the doppelganger set gives us evade creates a shadow at your original location, which we don't really care for the 2-set bonus, but it gives us traversal skills create 2 shadows along their path. And so when you do shift, you will create more shadows, which will use Shadow Cascade, and will help you stack shadows for your nodes that scales off of number of shadows, like Shadow Torrent and Shadow Cascade. So the parts of the doppelganger set that we are using are the helmet, the body armor, and the relic. The relic is our primordial. On the helmet here, we have 50% chance to gain a stack of Dust Crowd when you consume a shadow. So this will make it so our glancing blows, you will be able to reach 100% chance to receive a glancing blow at all times when you're just using your rotation. So glancing blow is very, very strong, gives you 35% less damage taken from glancing blows. So this is just another layer of damage reduction, which just makes you super tanky. Ward gain when you create a shadow. So to obtain these, there are a few ways to obtain the set shards. So this is a crafted piece of gear, right? You just would grab basically any exalted item that has a tier 7, and then you would put this in. You would, okay, look, let me start over. You would grab the set helm from the doppelganger set. You would put it in here, and then using a rune of corruption, it has a very high chance of transforming the item into just a regular item with the set affix. Then, with that set affix, you would use either Rune of Shattering or Rune of Removal to try to get the... well, actually, if it's corrupted, you need to use Rune of Shattering to get the affix shards and be able to craft onto something else. Another option is using the Woven Echo, the Great Bridge. I don't have it here, I think. But the Great Bridge is a Woven Echo that you... when you run at the end, there's a device that you put your original set items into, and then you can extract the shards from them. So that is how you get set shards. Very, very easy with Runes of Corruption, which you get just by completing Omen windows. So what you do is you would grab a tier 7 helm and craft it. You can craft it up to tier 5, and then you would just Rune of Havoc until you hit your ward gain when you create a shadow, and then boom, you got your piece of gear. Same for the doppelganger set. You would do the same thing, but this one you can actually seal. So if you have an exalted piece of gear with a tier 1 that you want to seal, it is a guaranteed seal so long as the exalted item has like all 4 affixes on it. So for this one, you would just craft the prefix for the Reforged set, then seal it at tier 1 to be guaranteed, and then craft your other prefix that you want to get increased damage per shadow with Shadow Cascade, and ward gain when you create a shadow. So, the increased damage per active shadow times 7, because we have 7 shadows, is super, super OP for increasing our damage. So, feel free to put this if you want to put more damage on your build. And I go for increased armor as my second suffix alongside health, because I am generating so much ward that I want my ward to be very, very good at mitigating damage. So that is why I'm scaling strength on the build. Strength gives you 4% increased armor, and I'm going for armor as well on the helm and the helm and body armor. The next piece of the set is the Doppelganger's Mimicry Reforge. So this one I want to go for tier 8. There's a couple of different setups that you could use. I'm not going to talk about them today. There's like a multitude of different options. If you decide to go with only a tier 7 affix here for a doppelganger set, and then using more mana efficiency with Sing Strike, and then using different items. But this is the setup that I ended up with that I feel is the most balanced. So you go for tier 8 here. This completely fixes your mana so long as you have the 7 shadows. So the shadows here, the shadows here. It solves your mana by itself just with the build, alongside the 2 idols for mana efficiency with Sing Strike. And it gives you a very good chance at always getting your 7 shadows to always get your maximum amount of damage output. So that's what I decided to go for. I have +2 Dancing Strikes on this one because Dancing Strikes has a lot of good nodes. Getting, even if you have 80% dodge chance, going to 81, 82, higher and higher and higher, it's always excellent. As the higher you go in percentage, the better that specific percentage is. So the more the more hits you'll be able to dodge. So that's why I decided to go for +2 Dancing Strikes here. You could go for different things. You could go for strength. Go for, there's a couple of different options, but that's what I decided to go for. So that is like the baseline of the gearing that is like mandatory for the build, alongside the gloves. So these gloves have a sealed affix, which is a champion affix. So you must kill champions to get +1 maximum shadow sealed. These affix always drop sealed. One strategy that I would recommend is if you are farming the end game, you just farm the Omen's Veil, and then you spec into the nodes in your Weaver tree to spawn as many champions as possible, and you will find about like 7 champion items per time that you do Omen's Veil. So there's different Woven Echoes as well, or you could just spec into champion nodes and just play the game normally. Another one that I want to talk about is the Rune Prison Complex, alongside spawning 2 exiled mages, and these exiled mages have a chance to be accompanied by champions. So that's another way that you could do it. Spamming Rune Prison Complex, never finishing the Echo, TPing out before interacting with the crafting station in the middle, and then going back in, you will spawn a lot of champions, and that is also the best favor farm per hour currently in the game that I know of, because they buffed it so much this patch. If you're able to like open up all of the rune prisons and then kill them all at the same time, it is absolutely massive for favor per hour, and you'll also be farming these gloves. But just as a general rule, kill champions, you'll get these gloves. Here you want to go for melee attack speed. I decided to go for ward gain on kill because this patch we are very often using the Omen's Veil to farm, and because this is so dense and very, very dangerous, I feel like ward gain on kill has a very high potential in this patch specifically. Even though this does nothing on bosses, it just is overall really great for general gameplay. Hybrid health, chance to shred armor on hit, very important. So for the boots, I went with Stymied Fate. I want to talk about one other option, which are the Army of Skin boots. So the Army of Skin boots are these ones, which gives you 52% more melee damage to high health enemies. But if you go for the Army of Skin boots, you need to go for the Siphon of Anguish ring. So, and also you have like a slightly longer cooldown on shift. I much prefer going with Stymied Fate, but if you want to go for the Army of Skin boots, feel free to do so and just go with Siphon of Anguish. But in my aspirational version, I go for Red Ring here with 1 heirloom. So that is the balanced option that I decided to go for. But you know, there's always this build in particular has so many different options that I feel like there's like an unlimited amount of ways that you could play the build. I went for Stymied Fate, cooldown recovery speed. Most important thing, this will apply Doom on hit and also gives you haste on hit. So very, very good. Brewmaster Buckle. This one is very nice because if you think that you are in danger, you just spam all of your potions, and then you have all of your health will be covered by your endurance. So, you know, if you're, I don't know, if you think I cannot get out of this situation, I will get hit by something very, very big, you can spam all of your potions, and even if the attack goes through all of your ward, it will still need to go through all of your health. That will be covered at 60% endurance. Currently I have 59, but yeah, I think in the planner we have 60. So you will be just having, basically, you're almost unkillable so long as you're not playing in like 10,000 corruption, right? Which like kind of like anything will kill you. But yeah, that is a very, very strong belt. Another option would be Strand of Souls. Strand of Souls is this specific belt, which gives you ward gain on kill, ward per second, ward retention, mana spent gain as ward, just a lot of ward synergy. It does not have a base of armor, which sucks, but all of the ward synergy makes you sustain your ward way better. So up to you. There's a couple of different options. Those are the two, I think, most reliable ones. Heirloom of the Last Nomad. This ring is quite specific. It has a very high roll of flat health, give you some good resistances. Gives you also increased stun duration, and this build stuns monster quite easily. It's also very easily obtainable with multiple LP. But one thing is, it has increased duration of stuns received. So you need to be wary that if you do get stunned, you can cleanse the stun with a potion. And you need to be very aware of this, especially in Omen windows, for example, where there's so many enemies throwing everything at you at the same time that, yeah, just make sure to use your potion if you do get stunned to not die, right? By the way, I've been playing this build in hardcore and still haven't died. It's very, very strong, even in hardcore. Ocieron gives you a little bit of less damage taken from chilled enemies, which we do get the chill on hit with Ocieron. And then you get the more damage per stack of shock. So this is just going to be just overall a good ring for damage and tankiness at the same time. There's a million other rings that you could use. Feel free to go ham on this slot. This is like very, very, very versatile slot. Our weapons, Eye of Reen gives us, you know, it's a very easy 1 LP slam. And if you get the corruption, there's a couple of good corruption that you could go. You could go for the melee damage, flat melee damage and damage per strength. You could go for the, I don't remember all by heart here, but there's quite a few good corruptions that you can go for. If we go melee, added melee damage and increased melee damage per strength. We also get melee attack speed and frenzy after using evade. Melee damage and damage for melee attacks for 1 mana cost. So there's so many good corruptions on this one. Getting a 1 LP and corrupting is excellent, but if you go for 2 LP, go for melee attack speed. Eye of Reen gives you a stack of Reen's Ire for 5 seconds when you crit with a melee attack, and that will give you a lot of critical strike multiplier. So that is very, very strong. Traitor's Tongue gives you plus level to skills with dexterity skills, increased melee attack speed, 13% crit chance when it's in your offhand, which it is right now. Also has implicit crit multi, and it's very easily obtainable with multiple LP as well. Try to go for melee attack speed and physical damage, and then maybe shred on here or physical penetration for your 3rd or 4th LP. You can actually like reliably get 4 LP on this. And then for our amulet, we go for Omnis. Omnis, this patch, I have shared with you guys a way to farm Omnis very easily. If you haven't seen this, go watch my latest video on the Omnis farm. But what you would do is farm as many Omnis as you can and corrupt them all till you get a perfect Omnis. So the chances are fairly... It says that it's 5%, but from my testing and from others, seems to be like it's more, but I mean, it's probably just like... an illusion that we have, you know, it's probably just confirmation bias. But Rune of Corruption on an Omnis, even though you don't have the 1 LP on it, get perfect Omnis, you got all the perfect res, and it's gonna be super easy to gear for resistances. For our blessings, we go for crit multi. Mana is very important so that you don't go under your maximum so that you don't go into negative mana and you can't use your skills anymore. Super important. You go for all res, armor, and armor. And then our idols, we go for... There's a couple of different options you could go for here. Our altar, we go for pyramidal with increased effect of prefixes because we want to increase the effect of the mana efficiency with Sync Strike. Also, other prefixes are also really, really good for damage, like increased damage per active shadow with Shadow Cascade. If you have an altar that has, for example, plus amount of Omen idols that you can use, and you do happen to have a lot of Omen idols, then sure, go for all of these. I went for a setup that is more easily obtainable, which is just a pyramidal altar with just try to go for effective prefix, and then get some mana efficiency, damage damage for skills used by shadows. And then you go for this increased damage per active shadow with Shadow Cascade, which is ×7s because we have 7 shadows. And then I went for health on these two here, just for, you know, rounding the build up quite well. And these are just like resistances, right? So, and armor and endurance. Try to cap your endurance. So that pretty much covers the build. I will finish the showcase and going into, I don't know, shall we try one run in 10,000 corruption with this build?
Not happening.
So I'm currently using Ward Game and create a shadow. Okay, let's go in 10,000 corruption. Surely you will die in 10,000 corruption. If you're seeing on the leaderboard people pushing 10,000 corruption and up, 20, 30, 40, 50, you are not farming at this level of corruption unless you're like playing like really, really slow. And farming efficiently, you need to stay fast, right? But just to show that you could potentially also go very high in corruption, even though it's not 10,000. You can maybe go like to 2,000 or something, right? This is the playstyle. Yeah, let's kill this guy. Oh. Typically build that push very, very high, have mechanics that can make them push, play pretty slowly. And then be super safe and killing monsters from off screen. But as you can see, I can still take a few hits even in 10,000 corruption. So this is the end game planner, not aspirational, nothing like that. So it is still possible. Realistically, if you play a lot, if you're an absolute blaster, you will get more than this gear. If you are more of a casual, you will get something close to this gear. Damage is not the issue. Tankiness is not the issue. So let's try this Omen window. We might die in here, actually. I guess Omen windows are pretty rippy in 10,000 corruption. Of course, let me remind you guys, this is my offline. We are in offline. Yeah, we got hit by our breath here. But as you can see, killing blow damage 86,000. There's no way. There's no way 86,000. All right, so that pretty much covers the build, guys. I hope that you will enjoy this build. I think this is probably the best overall build in the entire game right now. It's my opinion, okay? I think this is probably the best overall build for general gameplay, for anyone to just grab and just blast. I think this is perfect. It does every single bosses with ignoring mechanics like this. Even though it doesn't one-shot everything, you're just ignoring all mechanics and just having a very, very good time. So, hope you guys enjoy, and I'll see you guys all in the next video.